I feel like I've been making a lot of content for mid-game and end-game players, but I really want to get back to the basics, so let's talk about building teams. Hello everybody, I'm Roadblock and this is a Raid Shadow Legends video. I kind of wanted to make this video because one of my favorite videos that I made was about how to get 100k in Clan vs. Clan free to play. I was very proud of that video. I worked very hard on that video and I wanted to deliver another video for players that maybe don't know. I've had a saying on this channel for a very long time and I've gotten away from it a little bit, which is you don't know what you don't know. If you were to Google great arena teams, you're probably going to see arena teams that are using, crazy characters that you wouldn't normally get. Same thing if you're looking for Doom Tower progression team, if you're looking for clan boss teams, any teams that you're looking for in the game, you're probably going to get stuff with champions that are too good. I made this mistake recently where I was like, hey, I fixed my hard Fire Knight 10 team and everybody came down on me and was like, you have 2 newts, shut up. Right? So, I kind of want to do something that talks about a bit of the basics of the game. We'll start with Arena, because I think Arena gives the foundation of a lot of very important things. We're going to focus on Go First teams. Go Second teams are viable and they're doable, but this isn't a breakdown of specifically Arena. It's more of a breakdown of the counterparts that go into a team. So I'm not telling you to copy these teams exactly. I'm recommending to you to use this advice that I'm giving you and find the own version of the team on your account. So listen up, I just got a new promo link that you can use to follow along with me on my latest free-to-play adventure and get a free Elenaril as well as 3 more powerful epics as you level up. Here's how to do it. Log out of Plarium Play and uninstall. Click the link in the description and register with a brand new email. Launch Raid and complete the tutorial. Go to your inbox and claim your first champ. Don't miss out on your chance to get Elenaril right after signing up, as well as Fayne, Uugo, and Tagoar as you progress through Raid. Click on my link right now and let's crush this together. I might use a champion like Deacon in this video, and you may not have Deacon, but you might have something to substitute in for Deacon, potentially do the same role. I'm going to put up here a very early arena team that I had on this account a long time ago. In fact, it might still be saved. Let's take a look here. Okay, so I upgraded it a little bit there, but you can see here, a bit of an early team, right? So obviously Arbiter upgraded this team, but I have Arbiter as my speed and my increased attack. I have Deacon as my decreased defense and a little bit of extra turn meter control. And then I'm running 2 nukers because at the time I didn't have really good savage gear. I didn't have a way to one-shot everybody. This is okay. If you're struggling to get through arena, and you could even take out the Arbiter and then substitute in somebody else that brings increased attack, preferably the big version, right? So if you don't have Arbiter yet, maybe you have a Mordecai. Mordecai also brings some turn meter control. Maybe you have Ursula. This would have been the exact early team that I used back in the day because Ursula was my best increased attack champion, but she also decreased the attack on the enemy team as well. So there are a lot of different options. The other thing that you can consider when you're building a team is, do you self-buff? So that's very important because it can take away the need for another champion that you might not want to bring. So for example, if we look at Thor's kit, Thor self-buffs right here on the A3. So you get, he places decreased speed with this, but you also get increased attack and crit damage. So he's going to hit harder. And then if you get around to this one, to your A2, you're still going to be under those buffs, hopefully, to utilize them a second time and therefore do more damage, right? So that self-buffing part of it is really, really good. And there are a lot of champions that do self-buff. One of my favorites, and I don't think he gets talked about as much anymore, but I still think Genbo is a great nuker for a lot of new accounts that happen to pull him. If I would have pulled him on the free-to-play challenge, I would have been going nuts because he is a self-buffer. He increases crit rate and crit damage. and he is immune to decrease attack. I thought he gave himself increase attack, honestly, so I was a little bit wrong there, but still, the increased crit rate and crit damage means you could potentially, I still build him at 100%, but you could potentially build him for 70% crit rate, self buff, and then do damage. And what we mean when we say that is not just, oh, well, you just build them at 70% and it's fine. The idea is that you're substituting those stats with stats that you want. So instead of needing to find 100% crit rate with him, you could find 70% crit rate and then gain more attack percent or more crit damage in the rest of the stats for his build, or more speed even, right? But you want to make sure that you're prioritizing other stats. Don't just assume that you can bring in a bad piece just because he self buffs, but you still only have maybe 2,000 or 3,000 attack on him. That's not really going to do what you're looking to do. You want to use stuff like this when it comes to self buffing to elevate their value and be able to increase their stats to deliver more damage overall. So that's the kind of stuff that's important to keep in mind when we're talking specifically about arena nukers, because other champions like Coldheart, for example, is a champion that really you're just looking for crit damage and 70% crit rate. That is a conversation for another video though. Let's get back to building teams here. So we talked about arena. I think I've touched on it, right? So again, speed booster, decreased defense, weaken or debuffs in general, and then a nuker and probably some other filling in there to help elevate the team a little bit. Maybe something to give you protection in case you're not as fast as you think you are, or maybe a reviver. There's a lot of different options that you can do with that fourth slot. But if you're able to bring decreased defense is the main one that I look for, but bringing weaken just elevates that team even further. All right, let's move on now to dungeons. So dungeons, it's a lot of the same mechanics here. Now I am on my free-to-play, so the free-to-play is not as progressed in hard dungeons, and I've talked about this before. It's mostly due to laziness, to be honest, guys, but I kind of want to talk about the roles of the team here, right? So this, in this particular case, and again, we're talking about roles here. I'm not telling you to build this team. By the way, this team doesn't even do hard 10. So it's not the biggest, best team out there. I have probably a better team on the roster that I'm just not using right now, and that's on me, right? I'm letting myself down in that regard, but I'm okay with that. I'm fine farming at this difficulty, but let's talk about a couple of things here. So if I was to build just a basic dragon team, and I'll keep the hard dragon up there, but we're not really considering that, I would want to get like a speed or a lead, right? So you could take a look at your auras and try to find speed aura leads, but you want to make sure you're not bringing something that's only good in arena. You're going to want to find something that's good in dungeons or all battles. And why do I say a speed or a lead? Why not a defense lead? Why not an attack lead? You can certainly go with those options, but if we're talking about early game, you're going to find far more value in speed, where you can get multiple turns rather than necessarily stacking your attack. And early game accuracy has become far easier to get these days with the introduction of sets like Pinpoint and Feral. So I do think you can probably get away with not needing an increased accuracy. However, if you do get into the hard versions and you're struggling to hit your accuracy, then that's when you could potentially bring in an increased accuracy. Now you'll notice that I didn't really mention increased defense auras there. I actually really like increased defense auras too. If you don't have a viable speed aura to use in your teams, you can go with a tankier team. A lot of my very early teams on my main account, when I first started playing this game, I used Ultimate Death Knight because he was I got him as a login legendary way back when, and I was able to use him to kind of carry me through content. He brought a huge defense aura and a big shield to keep my team alive. So there are different approaches, but I personally feel that increased speed is probably the easiest way to go. One of the best, I think, increased speed auras for all battles is Deacon. Are lucky enough to get Deacon. Unfortunately, his promo code is no longer available. He used to have a promo code where you could get him for free, and I got him on this account as my first epic. Great champion, and he carried me through quite a bit. and he brings a 19% all battles aura. So really, really good, and I like him a lot for that aura, as well as the fact that he brings decreased defense and other things. So we'll use him as our aura and our decreased defense here against Dragon, right? So now that we have that sorted, what else are we looking for? Well, we're going to look for boss damage. I'm going to utilize Geomancer here mainly because he's an easier champion for a lot of players to get these days, being that he is an epic. You can see I've already got him plus forward on my free to play. And before you guys say it, I know there are a lot of you out there that have been playing for a long time but have yet to pull your first Geomancer. I feel for you. I really do. I'm so sorry. It could be rough without Geomancer. He does make a big, big difference. So we have in this team, we have our increase turn meter. We're getting an aura. We get a decreased defense. Here we get a HP burn and a really good boss damage. Now, the one thing you need to remember about Geomancer in particular is that you have to take damage to really get maximum value out of his capabilities. So we might want to build like a tankier, more supporty team in this instance. So you could go something like an ally protect champion. I'll say maybe like Taragi here is a good option, right? So, but where are we really kind of missing out? Well, we don't have any wave clear, right? We're focused on boss damage and boss protection, but we don't really have anything to deal with the waves. And this is where things start to get more interesting. So I would probably consider Seer as a reasonable option, but she is a void epic and a little bit harder to get. I don't have that many good nukers for like wave clear for epics, but we'll go with Thor. I'm not going to run this team or anything, so, you know, this is just me just showcasing stuff for you guys. But we'll go with Thor here because I think Thor, he was a fusion that potentially a lot of people could have got. A good substitute for Thor for a lot of newer accounts would be something along the lines of Alice, right? Alice does a lot of the same thing, and she filled that role for me in my free-to-play challenge account. So this is my wave clear. I have my debuff, but what happens if things go wrong? Well, what would I want to potentially be a little tanky or a little survivable? I mean, I have to take some hits, right? Well, that's where something like an Ursula comes in handy. We'll look at Ursula's kit here. So Ursula brings decrease attack and increase attack for my Thor, even though he self-buffs and doesn't need it. She also brings increased defense and strengthen, albeit on a pretty long cooldown, and a backup revive in case you need it. There's even a 40% chance of reducing turn meter. Now that won't work on the dragon, but that will work in other dungeons, and I'm mostly just using this as a layout for most dungeons. So why is this kit so good? Well, the decrease attack and the increasing of our buffs is very, very valuable. We're bringing survivability in two ways. And this is something that's very important for people to understand about decrease attack, because far too few people run decrease attack in a lot of their teams. Now, I think the reason for that is because more advanced players and streamers and content creators that you're probably watching have gotten to a point where decrease attack might be less valuable because they're just so tanky and strong. But for newer players, decrease attack is extremely valuable. And if you are lucky enough to pull something like an Ursula, her ability to decrease attack is even better because she's void and therefore cannot weak hit. So if we were looking at this team just at a conceptual level for regular dragon, it should be pretty viable. We are going to get some decreased defense here. That's going to make Thor do more damage to the waves. We get a little crowd control here. We get damage on the boss. That's going to do very large chunks of damage to the boss. We get two things of survivability and a backup revive in case things go really poorly and I miscalculated and the team isn't that good. So there's a few options, right? So yeah, I think that this is kind of a viable early game dungeon progression team type thing, right? I think this would, if I had this team, this would do very, very good and could probably even get me through a stage or two of hard dragon. I don't have a lot of gear on these champions right now, so we're not going to test it, unfortunately, but it is a couple of options for you guys to consider. But the important thing to remember is the role that they're providing. You know, do you have a debuffer that is going to help your damage elevate itself? That's decreased defense. That's what D can bring. Do you have a way to buff and increase the damage of whoever your nuker is? Maybe it's not Thor. Maybe you used the Wukong promo code, or maybe it's Alice. I don't think Alice self buffs, so they're going to want that increased attack from Ursula in order to do more damage. And, you know, other survivability mechanics and stuff like that as well. So that's kind of your basic dungeon team concept there. Okay, so now let's move on to one of the harder areas of the game that I think give people a little bit of trouble, especially early on. Let's talk about Doom Tower. Doom Tower can be pretty tricky because there are a lot of waves in here that can be really, really annoying to deal with. There are certain waves that have freeze mechanics that are very difficult to deal with, Siphi Rotos teams that are difficult to deal with. It's just there can be some really annoying stuff. Typically, in these waves, Seer is one of the top wave clears, but you need a couple of things to really set her up: cooldown reduction and buffs. For this team that you can see on screen, this is the team that I currently use to clear all of the waves in my Doom Tower, and you'll see Ursula is back again. She's a little redundant because Mithrala brings my increased attack and defense as well as strengthen, so I don't really need everything else in the kit. But this should show you how much I really mean it when I say that I like increased speed, because I'm bringing Ursula primarily just for her aura. I have been in the past running the speed in Doom Tower aura from Ursula. So this needs to take on a little bit more consideration and a little bit more of a wave focus. So in the previous team, we were looking at things like Geomancer and Taragi for survivability against the boss, but here we need more control, right? We need ways to lock out the enemy team potentially, and I don't mean lock out in terms of abilities, I mean just lock them down, prevent them from taking a turn and allowing us to get our damage in. And that can be a very challenging thing to do in this game. This is where champions like Odin, Armands, among others, can be very handy to help alleviate and limit the amount of damage that the enemy team can do. This particular team uses two different ones. So I have Mithrala in here. Mithrala is a cleanser, which is why I bring her. So if the enemy team does get a go, Mithrala has a very high resistance because her accuracy counts as her resistance. So she could potentially cleanse off any bad things that happen to us. Furthermore, I get a block damage out of Odin here, but I also get a stun and a lockdown out of Odin, so it really pays off quite a bit to have something like him. But of course, he's a void legendary, and I don't want you guys to get mad at me about how great of a roster I have. There are other opportunities though, and things that you can consider, but champions that are able to bring things like provoke, especially on an AoE, can be quite handy. Let's take a look at my overall roster and we'll filter by provoke that way. Generally speaking, when I think of provoke, I think of Hydra, and that's it. I guess and Magma Dragon, right? But I don't consider it that often in wave clear stuff. Now, while it is only a 40% chance of placing the provoke, that books up to 50%, something like a Drexstar, who you can get free to play, can be really useful in enemy control for a wave. So I do recommend getting and potentially building one. He's not my favorite champion anymore. I think that it's likely you could find something better as you progress by the time you can finally get him, because he does take at least 100 days to get, and it's never going to be that. It's probably going to be like, 130 days, probably somewhere in that range. So yes, overall, I think Drexstar is a good option for players to use for Doom Tower and some form of crowd control. Now, a lot of other free-to-play players sing this champion's praises. I will admit that I am not the biggest fan. However, I have been swayed, but I haven't been swayed on her stun. I'm swayed on her heal. I think this is pretty good. I like this heal a lot. I use it in Amius a lot of the time, but the stun I don't value as highly, I think, as other players do. So I generally would look for more consistent ways of stunning, but there aren't that many that are available early on. Like, a lot of them are going to be single target stuns and stuff like that, or they're only going to have a slightly better chance than what Scylla of the Drakes brings. Obviously, if you do have something like Armand's or Odin, you're going to get far more consistent stuns out of them, but stun is another way to kind of provide that mitigation that you're looking for to prevent the enemy team from really getting a turn. So ideally, you're bringing your debuffs that you're looking for, decreased defense being the one that I prioritized the most, and weaken being one that I would like to have, but if I don't have it, it's not the end of the world. You're going to want potentially a cleanser, and then your wave clear, maybe a reviver in there. That's kind of how you tackle Doom Tower. Now, you can see, not from this, but I have successfully completed all the difficulties of Doom Tower, and this is the team that I use, but you could substitute some things in there. I highly, highly recommend Mithrala once you get her for an early game player in almost all of your teams. She is amazing. Love her kit. And she also herself brings Petrification, which is another form of crowd control that she gets through her hex placing. So a great champion that I've wanted to mention as a crowd controller and didn't get an opportunity to. So, but yeah, I think I've kind of touched on everything that I really wanted to touch on. I wanted to talk about arena teams, I wanted to talk about dungeon teams, and I wanted to talk about Doom Tower teams. Now, when it comes to specific bosses in things like Doom Tower waves and such, that gets far more specific, and there's no like one size fits all there. Likewise, the same kind of thing with Cursed City, because while champions may be good in certain areas, you may not be able to use them in different Cursed City rooms, right? So, you know, Deacon's a great champion, but you may not be able to use him in every one of your Cursed City rooms. So I didn't really want to go too much into that. But I hope this helps you guys. When it comes to faction wars, I guess that's another area that we can kind of talk about. You're sort of looking for the same thing, but obviously you have your limitations, right? So you can see here, despite the fact that I have a bunch of legendaries in this faction, a lot of them aren't built, but I have a reviver and a healer here, right? I have my debuffer here. Don't really have any damage here, which is quite funny. So maybe I should finally build one of these guys. Oh, you can't even see any of them. They're all behind me. So yeah, I've got very good champions here that I just haven't built on this account. Eventually, I will get around to it. I've been kind of resting on my success. But either way, I want to say thank you guys for watching. If you are new here, please consider subscribing. It is the best way to support my channel. And I look forward to seeing you all in the next video. Take care.